we're kind of in a stage where we can plan much longer term than we did before. And there's so much opportunities coming out of COVID, especially in physical retail, as well as like international and like online and everything. So, now is a really exciting time for me.
Welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Just sit back, relax, and learn from the leaders of today. It's a journey. Each one is different, unique, inspiring. Let's get started. This episode is powered by J Ventures, a community-driven VC fund in Silicon Valley in partnership with Leumi Tech and sponsored by Hippo Insurance, Turing, Upwest Labs, and Hillel at Stanford. Let's talk about jewelry and retail experience. Before COVID, after COVID, during COVID, I'm honored to be here with Connie Nam, founder of Astrid Miyu. Connie started Astrid Miyu 9 years ago, wanting to create a jewelry brand that brings out the sentiment she felt when traveling around the world, visiting local boutiques and markets. They are aiming to change the jewelry experience through unique physical experience, strong community, and innovative products. Prior to this, Connie was trained as an investment banker in Asia, working mainly on tech IPOs. She has an MBA from London Business School. Connie Nam, thank you for joining me. How are you today?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Your beautiful daughter Summers is there next to you, so maybe she'll make an appearance. But what I love about this show is the informality of it and getting to pick leaders' brains in the most natural environment. Because really, what I want to hear is your personal journey. I haven't had many people from the jewelry business. I had a chance to check out the website I can't wait to hear about the experiential part of the stores. So Connie, we don't have much time.
Of course.
Talk to me a little bit about yourself. How do you get started in jewelry?
Yeah, so I come from an investment banking background, like boring, but I typically, like as a typical banker, I was burnt out, and then I did my MBA at London Business School. And while I was at London Business School, I just had a vague idea of wanting to be in fashion. So I worked for LVMH, like on a very short stint, and I decided that corporate life is not for me. So I wanted to start something. Like I always wanted to start my own business. I didn't know when, but I just took the plunge and started it as a project. And when I was starting the project, I didn't really know which category. I always loved jewelry, but I also love fashion. But when I looked at different spaces, I just felt like jewelry lacked that innovation piece. And also, I grew up with jewelry. My mom is a jewelry obsessed. She's like a magpie. And my dad used to travel a lot for business. And, everything, like every single piece of jewelry had some kind of meaning because we'd always pick something up from travels. And I used to love going to the markets and pick up jewelry. They weren't expensive jewelry, but they all had meaning. But, when I was going to so in the UK, we call it high street. High street means, I guess, like shopping streets. If we go to the shopping streets and go to big brand names, everything's a bit stale and very formal. Even the affordable jewelry brands like Swarovski and Pandora, they don't need to be, but everything's under the glass. People are in uniforms, very, very formal, and you need to ask, like, bug the sales assistants to take things out for you, which could be quite intimidating. And especially for a shopper like me, I normally know exactly what I want, and I just want to be left alone. So I just felt like there was that piece missing in the services bit, but also within the products. There was so much innovation going on in fashion, and so much like aspiration and selling that dream, and that none of that existed in jewelry. It was very much, I guess, like a bit of a stale industry where it was dominated by,
And how do you
like
explain that?
yeah, it
How do you
was.
explain the staleness?
How do I explain the
How do you
staleness?
explain the staleness? Yeah.
How do I explain the staleness? I think it just lacked, if you just look at the imagery or campaigns that jewelry brands take out, it's just like models looking very cold. Like it's just the top of the head, and they normally don't have anything on. Like they're normally like skinny white models, and I just felt like they don't portray that personality. So that's one example. And another example is like, as I mentioned, the services. If you walked into the stores, everyone was in uniform. So there was no personality coming through. So I wanted to create a jewelry brand that has personality in terms of physical experience, but also the image that we portray, but also with the designs that are accessible and commercial and exciting, and a brand that's a bit more sexy than the traditional jewelry brand. So I wanted a jewelry brand that acts like a fashion brand. And that's how I started Astrid Miyu. I guess it was that was quite lengthy.
No, I love it when people share with me how coming from investment banking, you're talking about staleness and formality. I can't imagine a position. You're also an associate at HSBC, and I can't imagine coming into a different industry, disrupting it from within. But why traditionally do we have this mentality when regards to jewelry? I imagine it's because these are really expensive items, and so you need somebody to help you handle them. But what you're saying is that you're actually thinking of a different model, which makes things psychologically more accessible, right?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And I think historically, the women were not the consumers of the jewelry. So women were wearing them, but they were gifted by men. So I think a lot of the experiences were tailored to men buying gifts. So maybe they needed like a lot of guidance because they're not the actual end user. And a lot of the jewelry shops or brand owners are men as well. So I wanted to create this jewelry because we are the end users. I wanted to create a jewelry brand that's by women for women, women buying for themselves or women buying for their girlfriends. And I think that's why the experience was very different versus like what I'm creating.
So I saw that the stores are reopening on April 12th in London.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me, if I walk into a store, it doesn't matter if I'm a man, woman, whatever. What do I experience? Because a lot of times I read, you're thinking a lot about the experiential retail, and I get excited about that a lot. So what do I experience as a customer as I walk into the
Yeah.
stores?
Yeah. I mean, firstly, a lot of personality. We don't have uniform code or we don't have, obviously, like we want everyone to be presentable and on brand, but everyone can bring their personality out, like in terms of what they wear, but also like, just be natural and be yourself and speak to customers like you would talk to a friend. So you wouldn't feel like you're walking into a jewelry store. So a lot of our customers actually are locals to the stores that we're in. So I mean, like we are at scale relatively, but everyone feels like it's a local store. So they're coming in to catch up with their friend, who are store managers and store associates. So that's one part of experience. But another part is we have a couple of services. We sell jewelry, but we also provide services that are piercing. We also have fine line tattoo services. We also have bracelet welding services, meaning I think a lot of people get confused with this, but we have a chain of gold, like thread, and we have professional jewelers with the welding machine welding the bracelet right onto your wrist. So it's like a forever bracelet that's tied. So you don't have that clasp hanging that annoys you. So we have that service. Yeah, and we have like private consultation services. So all of these combined is that retail experience that we have.
And as the founder and leader of this initiative, how do you create a culture where on one end you're saying we're scaling, on the other end you're saying we still remain the local brand that people love and connect with on a personal level? You're mentioning that people are connecting with the store managers and the people working there in an informal setting. How do you cultivate a culture like that? Because it sounds like it's not a trivial
Yeah,
thing to do.
yeah. It's a very, very good question because when we're at a small scale, it's so easy because I can just like go into the store and talk about it, like and just randomly walk in and talk to the store managers. But obviously, like I can't do that now, because I mean, like not to sound that I'm busy, but like I have, like a lot of team to manage and like strategic directions that I need to manage and things like that. So it's about like um defining the value sets that I want to create, defining the culture. So what we did last year was redefined our values into three key components. So that involved everyone in the business. So we had small workshops in groups of 5, and everyone had to bring, a piece of example of when they felt at their best at Astrid and Miyu. And then we distilled those down to 3 different values. And everything, so the first is grow together, second is celebrate each other, third is break boundaries. And everything, every single behavior sits under that so that we can bring those behaviors out based on values. But it's also about hiring the right people. So hiring the right people that are willing to, that get excited about this journey and that get excited about making friends, not just about selling and like pushing through profits. Yeah, so it's like hiring like absolutely the right
That
people,
makes a
but
lot of
also,
sense.
having all those structures, the recruitment process that everyone can follow, recruitment process, and also like the appraisal process that strictly follows these values, not just their business KPIs. So I think all of these combined are really
Amazing.
important in cultivating that culture.
So if I'm not mistaken, it's been about 8 or 9 years, right, in the making.
Mhm.
And what has been, if you look back, um, coming fresh into the retail space from investment banking, what were there any like crazy surprises that you're saying like, wow, like I did not expect this to happen, or some major challenges that you've seen along the way that if you were to go back 8 years, you would tell sort of younger Connie about, how to advance with this company?
I guess like if I were to go back, I guess this is a difficult question, right? Because it's a balance. I think I did what I did because I was young and naive, and if I knew everything, it would be very daunting to start anything because I know how much work it takes. But
I
I guess
love
going
that.
big, yeah, yeah. I think I mean I don't know like whether I could have done it better if I knew everything. To be honest, but I think one thing I might do differently if I were to start another company is I would probably hire a very strong team earlier on. So yeah, I had a lot of like initially I made a lot of hiring mistakes and I realized along the way like having a great team, I'm not just individually but the team that fits into the values and the fit team that can gel into the existing team, like building that strong team is so important. So I would really focus on that initially, and that was not my natural go-to initially, especially coming from investment banking. It was all about like looking at the metrics, like looking at how the business was going, not about the people, but I would definitely focus a lot more on the people.
No, and it sounds to me like, what you said before about this idea that if you had you known, some of the difficulties of what's in store for you, you might not have even gone on some of the journeys, which I think is, that's a really interesting way of looking at it. That if you don't have that, that naivety, then you're not really able to move on. You're not able to push forward sometimes.
Yeah, absolutely. And I could pour everything in because it was, my first baby and I didn't know anything. And part of it was my learning journey as well.
Right. What are some of the most exciting moments? Whether it's like, the launch of the first store or the scaling of the second store. Well, if you look back at the past 8 years, what were some of the really, the aha moments that you had?
I think getting our store model right was really exciting because initially we were just selling jewelry. And obviously we had that service component, like customer services component that was very exciting that everyone loved. But the business really kicked off once we started offering these additional services like piercing, tattoos, and welding. So getting that business model right was really exciting for me because it also meant that our stores were becoming cash cows, whereas before the online business was kind of funding the stores. So we could really scale that. Um, and then like I'm really excited about right now, actually, although we're stuck like in the lockdown, but just the prospect of being able to expand our stores, but also we're planning international growth, and we're kind of in a stage where we can plan much longer term than we did before. And there's so much opportunities coming out of COVID, especially in physical retail, as well as like international and like online and everything. So now is a really exciting time for me.
Right. So take me back to that moment where, London shuts down and you realize, okay, for the foreseeable future, it could be weeks, it could be months, we're not going to have this experiential retail. You have a lot of staff that is now not coming to the stores. We were talking about, this personal connection you have, and all of a sudden that personal connection doesn't really work, right? How do you think through that as a leader?
Oh wow! When the pandemic first hit, like I couldn't really think. I just had to put together plan and firefights, and I think that was the case for all leaders. So I mean, the first thing like was, oh my God, like what's going to happen to the staff? Like, how are we going to pay them? So the first thing was I went to our head of finance and we ran a model like, okay, like if we assume zero revenue for the next 6 months, like, how like zero revenue, how long can we last? Yeah, and I think her answer was like 12 months. And I was like, okay, like let's pay 50% to all our staff until like 6 months on. So this is before like the government came up with furlough scheme or anything, because I knew that I had to pay, they probably had to survive like on the salary, but we probably couldn't pay fully. So that's the first thing I did. And the government announcement obviously after a couple of weeks was a total relief, because we knew that we could save that much on cash. And then the next thing we did was like we cut down all the marketing budget, but really communicated to our customers online on a very personal level. So we weren't talking about jewelry. We were just talking about like, how are you? Like, how are you taking care of yourself? And then the next thing, when everything settled down, was we introduced a virtual styling session. So our store managers actually, customers can book an appointment and our store managers would show jewelry to them so that they can style themselves, etc. Because the customers at the end of the day didn't want to hear too much about work from home or self-care anymore, because everyone was doing it. They actually wanted to, see jewelry and, forget about like what's going on. They wanted us to sell that dream. So we started doing that through online styling.
Amazing. And so actually this episode is going to air on April 13th. And I believe April 12th is going to be the first time that the stores are reopening.
Yeah, yes. Hopefully, fingers crossed.
So congratulations, hopefully. Are you ready for some fun questions? We just have a few minutes left and I know you have to go. All right. So number one,
Yeah.
what is your favorite subject in school?
Oh, my favorite subject. My favorite subject. It's quite odd, but it's a combination of I loved art, and anything creative, but like all the art classes, like art, fine art, photography. But I also loved math. Um, yeah, because like if I knew a couple of formula and logic, I could solve everything. And I'm quite a lazy person. I don't like memorizing and things, so I thought like math was quite easy for me.
I love it.
So
Okay,
like
one
yeah,
of your
combination of two like very different subjects.
amazing. One of your role models in life, real or fake?
Um, Role models. I mean, I love Oprah Winfrey. I love how she can bring out that vulnerability out in other people, and she's so good at reading people. And that's one of my goals in life, to be able to read through people. So like, yeah, she's my role model, and she's just like an amazing business person as well.
Amazing. And the last question, 3 words you would use to describe yourself.
I would say like, I mean, I don't want to admit this, but like competitive, because this is what like everyone tells me. I'm one of those like really competitive people, like when it comes to petty games. So competitive, um, visionary, and I guess like creative. Those are the 3 things.
I love it. Connie, thank you so much for coming here. I know how busy you are and I really appreciate it. Best of luck with everything that you have in store. I really appreciate you taking the time. This was wonderful. And again, hopefully, congratulations on yesterday's launch. So stay safe and stay healthy. And I can't wait to come and experience the stores myself. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Please come.